Have you noticed something strange about most container gardening advice? Every spring, garden centers fill their benches with gorgeous flowers. Millions of gardeners buy them. They plant them in pots around their patios, porches, decks, and front entrances. Everything looks beautiful for a few months. Then winter arrives. The plants die. And next spring, those same gardeners are back at the nursery buying replacements all over again. Year after year. Season after season. The gardening industry quietly depends on that cycle continuing forever. But there is another way to garden. A way that saves money. A way that reduces work. A way that actually gets better with time instead of more expensive. Because some plants don't just survive in containers, they thrive in them. Some of them actually perform better in pots than they do in the ground. Some become larger every year. Some give you free extra plants after only a few seasons. And one plant on today's list can realistically provide more than $100 worth of free divisions from a single container. By the time we get to plant number 7, you're going to understand why experienced gardeners eventually stop filling their containers with annuals and start investing in perennials instead. Let's get into it. Before we dive into today's video, I have a major announcement. The gardening guide you've been writing to me about for months is finally here. The Plant Once Garden is officially out. You have been incredibly patient with me while I took the time to get this right. It is approximately 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, gathered into one complete reference, designed with a hand-drawn heritage cover and warm cream pages that feel like a guide your grandmother would have owned. Inside, you'll find the 90 perennial plants that come back every year with almost no labor, 6 complete garden plans, the no-labor planting calendar, and the hydrogen peroxide method explained completely. I've also included the specific perennials that bring hummingbirds singing and dancing right outside your window, the chapter on what your garden becomes over 20 years, and the mistakes that kill perennials. This is a reference you can lean on for the rest of your gardening life. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now, or click the link in the pinned comment or description below to get your copy. Thank you again for your patience. Now, back to the garden. Plant number 1, hosta. Most gardeners have at least one spot where nothing seems to grow properly. Maybe it's beside a porch. Maybe it's under an overhang. Maybe it's a shaded patio that receives only a few hours of morning sun. You try flowers. They struggle. You try annuals. They fade. You try something else. It lasts one season and disappears. Hostas solve that problem permanently. Hostas are hardy throughout USDA, zones 3 through 9, making them suitable for most gardeners across the United States. And unlike many container plants, hostas actually benefit from being grown in pots. The biggest reason is drainage. One of the fastest ways to kill a hosta in the ground is through constantly wet soil around the crown. Containers allow you to control that environment far more effectively. The second advantage is slug control. Slugs love hostas. They treat hosta leaves like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Growing hostas in containers creates a natural barrier that often reduces damage dramatically. The foliage alone makes these plants worth growing. Some varieties produce giant blue-green leaves. Others display creamy white variegation. Some have bright chartreuse foliage that practically glows in shade. A mature hosta container can look like a living sculpture. And here's the part most gardeners don't realize. Hostas become more valuable with age. After 3 to 4 years, a mature clump can usually be divided into several new plants. One container eventually becomes 2, then 4, then 8. At current nursery prices, one established hosta can easily produce $45 to $100 worth of free plants. That's a remarkable return from a single container perennial. Plant hostas in quality potting mix. Keep them watered during their first season, and let them settle in. After that, they'll become one of the most dependable plants you own. Plant number 2, astilbe. If hostas are the kings of shade foliage, astilbe are the kings of shade flowers. Most flowering plants want sun. Lots of it. Astilbe never got that memo. These beautiful perennials thrive in conditions that cause many flowering plants to struggle. They're hardy throughout USDA zones 3 through 8 and produce elegant feathery plumes that rise above attractive fern-like foliage. When in bloom, they create a soft, almost cloud-like appearance. And in containers, they often outperform plants growing directly in garden beds. Why? Because moisture control is everything. Astilbe dislike drying out. That's their biggest weakness. In a container, however, you can monitor moisture precisely and provide exactly what the plant needs. That level of control frequently leads to stronger growth and better flowering. If you prefer white flowers, Bridal Veil remains one of the most reliable varieties available. For deeper color, Finale produces rich red plumes above attractive dark foliage. And if you're working with a smaller patio or balcony, Sprite offers beautiful shell-pink flowers on a more compact plant. What makes Astilbe especially valuable is timing. Many shade gardens look wonderful in spring and then become visually quiet by early summer. Astilbe changes that. The flower plumes create movement, texture, and color exactly when many other shade plants are relying entirely on foliage. Plant them in containers large enough to retain moisture. Avoid letting the soil completely dry out, and they will reward you for years. Plant number 3, lavender. Lavender is one of the most misunderstood container plants in gardening. People buy it because they love the fragrance. They plant it in ordinary potting soil. They water it generously. They fertilize it. And then they wonder why it dies. The truth is that most gardeners kill lavender with kindness. Lavender is hardy throughout USDA zones 5 through 8 for English varieties and USDA zones 6 through 9 for many of the newer selections. And containers are often the best place to grow it. But only if you understand one critical rule. Drainage matters more than anything else. Standard potting mix alone can hold too much moisture around the roots. Instead, mix your potting soil with approximately 1/3 coarse perlite. That simple adjustment dramatically improves drainage and creates conditions lavender actually enjoys. For colder climates, Hidcote remains one of the best choices available. Gardeners in hotter and more humid regions should strongly consider Phenomenal, which was specifically selected for improved heat and humidity tolerance. Once established, lavender wants surprisingly little from you. In fact, neglect is often the correct strategy. Do not fertilize it. Do not pamper it. Do not keep the soil constantly wet. The slight stress created by lean growing conditions actually increases the concentration of essential oils within the plant. That's what produces the fragrance everyone loves. After the first major bloom flush, trim the plant back by approximately 1/3, but only cut into green growth. Never cut into old woody stems. That single maintenance task is usually enough to keep the plant looking excellent. And unlike many annual container flowers, lavender returns year after year, while continuing to provide fragrance, pollinator value, and beautiful silver foliage. Plant number 4, Coreopsis. There are flowering perennials. And then there are flowering machines. Coreopsis belongs firmly in the second category. These plants seem almost determined to bloom. While many perennials produce one major flush of flowers and then slow down, Coreopsis just keeps going. Hardy throughout USDA zones 3 through 9, this is one of the longest blooming container perennials you can grow. The flowers may look cheerful and effortless, but the plant itself is remarkably tough. Heat doesn't bother it. Drought doesn't bother it. Containers don't bother it. It simply continues producing flowers. Moonbeam remains one of the most popular varieties for good reason. Its soft lemon-yellow blooms create a gentle cottage garden appearance that works with almost any planting scheme. If you prefer stronger color, Zagreb offers rich golden yellow flowers paired with attractive thread-like foliage. Now here's the secret that separates a good Coreopsis container from an exceptional one. Deadheading. But don't worry, this isn't complicated. You don't need pruners. You don't need special techniques. Simply run your fingers through the plant a couple of times each week and remove spent flowers. The entire process takes less than 2 minutes, and that tiny investment of time can literally double the number of flowers produced throughout the season. That's one of the highest effort-to-reward ratios in gardening. Coreopsis is also highly attractive to pollinators. Bees visit constantly. Butterflies frequently stop by. And because the flowering season is so long, the plant continues providing nectar long after many other perennials have finished their display. For gardeners who want maximum color with minimal effort, few container plants can compete with Coreopsis. Plant number 5, Heuchera, coral bells. Most gardeners focus almost entirely on flowers. That's understandable. Flowers are what catch your eye first. But if you study professionally designed container gardens, you'll notice something interesting. The plants doing most of the visual work usually aren't flowers at all. They're foliage plants, and few foliage perennials can compete with Heuchera. Commonly called coral bells, Heuchera is hardy throughout USDA zones 4 through 9 and provides something most flowering plants simply can't: year-round color. The modern varieties available today are extraordinary. Pallas purple produces rich burgundy foliage so dark it almost appears black in certain light. Lime Ricky creates electric chartreuse foliage that practically glows from across the yard. Caramel delivers warm amber-orange tones that look stunning from spring through fall. And unlike flowering plants that look spectacular for a few weeks and then fade into the background, Heuchera performs every single day of the growing season. In containers, that's especially important. A container occupies valuable visual space. You want that space working for you all year long, not just during bloom season. Another advantage is size. Heuchera stays compact. It doesn't become unruly. It doesn't overwhelm nearby plants. It forms a tidy mound that works beautifully in pots, window boxes, porch planters, and mixed container displays. The flowers are attractive too. Thin stems rise above the foliage carrying dozens of tiny bell-shaped blooms in shades of pink, white, or coral. Pollinators appreciate them. But make no mistake, the foliage is the star of the show. Here's another benefit many gardeners overlook. In USDA zones 7 through 9, many Heuchera varieties remain evergreen. That means your containers continue displaying color even when much of the garden has gone dormant. Planted in part shade or bright shade, provide good drainage, and divide it every few years. The result is one of the most reliable long-term container plants available. Plant number 6, Carex, sedge. Let's talk about a plant that almost nobody gets excited about at the garden center. And that's exactly why it's so valuable. Carex, also known as sedge. At first glance, it doesn't appear flashy. There are no giant flowers, no dramatic blooms, no bright colors screaming for attention. But experienced gardeners understand something beginners often miss. Texture matters. Movement matters. Structure matters. And Carex provides all three. Hardy throughout USDA zones 5 through 9, this grass-like perennial creates elegance in containers 12 months of the year. While many flowering plants spend part of the year looking tired, dormant, or completely absent, Carex continues contributing to the overall design. Evergold remains one of the most popular varieties. Its green leaves feature bright golden centers that illuminate shaded patios and porches. Ice Dance creates striking white-edged foliage. Bronze Form delivers rich coppery tones that pair beautifully with flowering perennials. The real magic happens when you combine Carex with other plants. Place it beside hostas. Mix it with Heuchera. Use it around astilbe. Suddenly your containers gain movement and contrast. The foliage sways with every breeze. The textures become more interesting. The entire arrangement looks more sophisticated. And here's the best part. Carex doesn't demand much from you. It doesn't require constant deadheading. It doesn't need complicated pruning. It simply grows. Many varieties remain attractive throughout winter as well, providing valuable structure when other plants disappear. Divide mature clumps every 2 to 3 years in early spring, and you'll quickly multiply your collection without spending another dollar. For gardeners looking to create containers that look professionally designed, Carex is often the missing piece. Plant number 7, Echinacea, coneflower. This is where many gardeners make a surprising discovery. They assume container gardening means sacrificing big, bold, perennial flowers. Echinacea proves otherwise. Coneflowers are among the toughest flowering perennials in North America. They're hardy throughout USDA zones 3 through 9. They tolerate heat. They tolerate drought. They tolerate neglect. And they look absolutely spectacular in containers. The traditional purple varieties remain beautiful, but modern breeding has dramatically expanded your options. Magnus Purple produces large classic blooms that attract pollinators all summer. Hot Paprika delivers fiery orange-red flowers that demand attention from across the yard. When planted in a large container, Echinacea creates a genuine focal point. People notice it. Visitors ask about it. Pollinators absolutely love it. Bees work the flowers constantly. Butterflies visit throughout the season. And unlike many flowering plants that collapse during summer heat, coneflowers seem to thrive when temperatures rise. The container advantage is surprisingly simple. In garden beds, Echinacea can sometimes become crowded by neighboring plants. Containers eliminate that competition. The plant receives its own dedicated space, allowing those bold flowers to take center stage. Now here's something most gardeners never think about. Don't cut the seed heads down in autumn. Leave them standing. Throughout winter, goldfinches and chickadees will feed on the seeds. What was once simply a flower pot becomes a wildlife feeding station. You'll enjoy flowers during summer and bird activity during winter from the same plant. That's remarkable value from a single container perennial. And economically, the plant makes even more sense. Divide mature clumps every few years and you'll quickly produce additional plants for free. One purchase eventually becomes several. 7 plants in, and a pattern should be becoming obvious. The best container perennials aren't the ones demanding constant attention. They're the ones quietly rewarding you year after year, while asking very little in return. By the way, if you're looking to completely transform your yard into a low-maintenance paradise, don't forget that my full reference guide, The Plant Once Garden, is now officially available. It's 150 pages covering all the perennial foundations and permanent setups we talk about on this channel. You can scan the QR code right here on the screen, or find the link in the pinned comment below to grab your copy. Now, let's get right back into today's topic. Plant number 8, Agapanthus. Some plants blend into the background. Agapanthus does the exact opposite. When it flowers, it becomes the centerpiece of the entire container. Commonly called Lily of the Nile, Agapanthus is hardy throughout USDA, zones 7 through 11. Gardeners in USDA zones 5 and 6 can still grow it successfully by moving containers against a protected south-facing wall before severe winter freezes arrive. The flowers are unlike almost anything else on this list. Tall stems rise above the foliage, carrying large globe-shaped clusters of blooms in shades of blue, violet, white, and lavender. From a distance, the flower heads almost appear to float above the container. The architectural impact is tremendous. One mature Agapanthus can make a plain patio look professionally landscaped. And here's the secret most gardeners never hear. Agapanthus actually prefers being crowded. Most container plants eventually need larger pots to maintain performance. Agapanthus is different. Slightly restricted roots encourage heavier flowering. The plant often produces more blooms when it feels a little confined. That means you don't need to constantly repot it. In fact, repotting too frequently can reduce flowering. Allow the plant to remain comfortably pot-bound until bloom production noticeably declines. Then divide or repot. This simple strategy can reward you with years of spectacular summer flowers from the same container. Place it in full sun, provide good drainage, and resist the temptation to fuss over it. Agapanthus performs best when you let it do what it naturally wants to do. Plant number 9, catmint nepeta. If there were an award for effort versus reward, catmint would be one of the strongest contenders on this entire list. This plant works harder than almost anything else in the garden. Yet it asks almost nothing in return. Hardy throughout USDA zones 4 through 8, catmint produces months of lavender blue flowers above soft gray-green foliage. The variety most gardeners should look for is Nepeta kemsfassenii Walker's Low. Despite the name, it isn't particularly low-growing. It forms broad mounds of flowers that create the same relaxed cottage garden effect people often try to achieve with lavender. The difference is reliability. Lavender can be particular. Catmint isn't. Average soil? Fine. Heat? Fine. Drought? Fine. Humidity? Fine. The plant simply keeps performing. And unlike many flowering perennials that bloom once and disappear into the background, catmint offers an easy trick for extending the display. After the first major bloom flush finishes, cut the plant back by approximately half. That's it. No complicated pruning. No special technique. Just a simple haircut. Within a few weeks, the plant rebounds with fresh growth and a second major display of flowers. Essentially, you're getting 2 flowering seasons from one plant. Pollinators love it. Bees cover it. Butterflies regularly visit it. And deer generally leave it alone because of the aromatic foliage. Now consider the economics. Every spring, garden centers fill entire sections with annual petunias. People buy them, plant them, enjoy them for a season, then replace them next year. Catmint keeps coming back, year after year, without requiring constant replacement. That's exactly why experienced gardeners often choose long-lived perennials instead. The initial investment keeps paying dividends. Plant number 10, hellebore, Lenten rose. Most gardeners think of flowers as a spring and summer experience. Hellebore changes that entirely, because this plant blooms when almost nothing else is blooming. Hardy throughout USDA zones 4 through 9, hellebores earn their place in containers by providing color during the most unlikely time of year. Late winter, sometimes even while snow remains on the ground. When the landscape appears dormant and lifeless, hellebores begin producing elegant flowers in shades of white, pink, burgundy, plum, and rose. It's a remarkable sight. The flowers seem to arrive when the garden needs them most. And unlike many plants that deliver a brief display before fading away, hellebores offer another major advantage: evergreen foliage. The leathery leaves remain attractive throughout much of the year. That means the container continues contributing visual interest even when the plant isn't flowering. For shade gardens, that's incredibly valuable. Many gardeners discover that hellebores become one of their favorite plants simply because they show up when everything else is still asleep. And here's perhaps the most impressive fact. A healthy hellebore can continue performing in the same container for 20 years or more. Think about that for a moment. 20 years. One planting decision. Decades of flowers. Decades of evergreen foliage. Decades of reliable performance. That's exactly the kind of plant this video is about. Plant it once. Enjoy it for years. Number 11. Sedum Autumn Joy. I couldn't finish this list without mentioning one more container perennial that deserves serious consideration. Sedum Autumn Joy. If you've ever forgotten to water a container and returned expecting disaster, this may be the plant you've been searching for. Hardy throughout USDA zones 3 through 9, Autumn Joy combines toughness, beauty, wildlife value, and simplicity better than almost any perennial available. The foliage appears in spring as thick, succulent-like leaves that store water within the plant itself. That's the reason sedum handles dry conditions so effortlessly. While many container plants panic during hot weather, sedum barely notices. As summer progresses, large flower heads begin forming. At first, they resemble clusters of tiny green broccoli heads. Then they gradually transform into soft pink flowers. By autumn, those flowers deepen into rich copper and rust-red tones that look spectacular against the changing season. The display arrives precisely when many gardens begin fading. And unlike many flowering plants, autumn joy continues providing interest long after the blooms finish. The dried seed heads remain standing through winter. Snow settles on them beautifully. Birds feed on the seeds. The structure remains attractive for months. Like lavender, sedum demands excellent drainage. Mix standard potting soil with approximately 1/3 coarse perlite or grit. Avoid soggy conditions. Avoid overwatering. And absolutely avoid heavy fertilization. Too much fertilizer produces weak stems and floppy growth. Neglect is often the best strategy. Here's where the economics become remarkable. Dividing sedum is incredibly easy. You can divide mature clumps. You can root stem pieces. You can create new plants with very little effort. One inexpensive nursery plant can eventually become dozens over the course of a decade. That's one of the highest returns you'll find anywhere in gardening. Now that you've seen all 11 plants, there's something important you need to understand. The difference between a container that looks fantastic for years and a container that struggles after one season usually isn't the plant. It's the setup. Most perennial failures happen before the plant ever goes into the pot. The first mistake is choosing a container that's too small. Garden centers sell a lot of beautiful decorative pots that look wonderful on display shelves. The problem is that many of them don't provide enough root space for long-term perennial growth. Remember, these plants are supposed to live in that container for years, not months, years. Bigger containers hold more soil. More soil holds moisture more consistently. More soil protects roots from temperature extremes. And more soil allows plants to establish stronger root systems. Whenever possible, choose the largest container that comfortably fits your space. Future you will be grateful. The second mistake is poor drainage. Almost every perennial on today's list can tolerate occasional drought. Very few can tolerate constantly soggy roots. Always make sure containers have drainage holes. Always. No exceptions. A beautiful pot without drainage is simply a decorative bucket waiting to kill your plants. The third mistake is using the same soil forever. Container soil gradually breaks down over time. After several seasons, it becomes compacted and loses much of the structure that roots need. Whenever you're dividing or repotting a perennial, refresh part of the soil at the same time. That simple habit keeps plants vigorous for years longer. Let's talk about something the gardening industry rarely emphasizes. You shouldn't have to keep buying the same perennial repeatedly. Many of the plants on today's list actually become more valuable with age. Hostas, Eucharis, Carex, Echinacea, Sedum, Agapanthus. Many of these eventually become large enough to divide, and every division becomes a new plant. Think about that for a moment. You buy one plant. A few years later you have 2, then 4, then 8, then enough plants to fill additional containers, expand other areas of your garden, or share with family and friends. That's one of the reasons experienced gardeners often spend less money than beginners. They aren't constantly replacing plants. They're multiplying the plants they already own. The easiest time to divide most perennials is early spring when fresh growth begins appearing. Lift the root ball. Separate it into sections. Replant the divisions. That's it. No complicated techniques. No special equipment. Just free plants. One advantage of growing perennials in the ground is that the surrounding soil insulates the roots. Containers don't have that benefit. The roots experience colder temperatures because they're exposed on all sides. Fortunately, protecting container perennials isn't difficult. In colder regions, move containers closer together before winter arrives. The grouped containers help insulate one another. Placing containers near a house wall can also provide additional protection from severe temperature swings. For plants, such as Agapanthus, that sit near the edge of their hardiness range, a protected south-facing location can make a tremendous difference. The goal isn't to keep plants warm. The goal is to prevent repeated freeze and thaw cycles that stress the roots. Do that successfully, and most of these perennials will return year after year. When most people think about container gardening, they think about flowers. But that's actually the smallest benefit. The real advantage is freedom. Freedom from replanting every spring. Freedom from constantly replacing dead annuals. Freedom from spending money on the same plants year after year. A container filled with hosta, heuchera, or hellebore doesn't become less valuable with time. It becomes more valuable. The plant grows. The display improves. The root system strengthens. The container develops character. Every year adds to the investment instead of resetting it. That's what makes perennial container gardening different. You're building something permanent, something that improves with age, something that rewards patience. And that's exactly why so many experienced gardeners eventually make the switch. Because once you've watched a container come back bigger and better for the 5th, 6th, or 10th year in a row, it's very difficult to go back to starting over every spring. The gardeners with the most beautiful patios and porches aren't necessarily the ones spending the most money. They're often the ones who made smart planting decisions years ago. If you only remember one thing from today's video, remember this. Annuals give you one season. Perennials give you years. Hosta, astilbe, lavender, coreopsis, heuchera, carex, echinacea, agapanthus, catmint, hellebore, and sedum autumn joy. Every one of them has proven that container gardening doesn't have to become an endless cycle of replacing plants. Plant them once. Take care of them properly. Give them time to establish, and then let them do what they were designed to do. Come back. Again and again and again. If you're ready to stop wasting time on plants that die every winter and finally build a garden that takes care of itself, don't forget to grab your copy of The Plant Once Garden. It's 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, completely mapped out for you. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now, or click the link in the description below to get started. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.